Now I'd like to invite Trey Ferguson from the Intention Church to come forward. Trey will be sharing with us about that group, and we'll also share on Saturday morning, so you'll have other opportunities to hear from him. Welcome.
Morning, everybody. Here we go. I like it here. Kind of nice. I am Trey Ferguson, currently the executive pastor at the Refuge Church in Homestead, Florida, which is in the southern portion of Miami-Dade County. But I'm here today before you, not just as a representative of the Refuge Church, which is not a part of the Central District Conference or Mennonite Church USA, as a matter of fact, but I am one of those dreamers that she just mentioned. I am here as a representative and to tell the story of one of those emergent communities that she talked about. Before I get there, I need to set a scene for you. In an ancient, faraway land called 2020. There was a global pandemic. Some of y'all might have heard something about it. It was real wild. Closing all sorts of stuff, restaurants, schools, churches. You didn't know what to do. We're masking up and social distancing, moving events outside and online, doing whatever we could to try and stop the spread of this virus that we're still learning so much about today. Some of us even lost loved ones. A lot of us had to adjust to new technologies, attending funerals, homegoings, wakes online. My kids spent all of one school year and part of another one learning online. My daughter celebrated her 8th grade graduation online. And from where I sit, we learned a lot about the church's failure to treat online communities as real and necessary. Things started shutting down in March of 2020. And I remember because my kids were just heading into spring break and I'd just gotten back from a week-long intensive in seminary up in Richmond, Virginia, where I was attending seminary, though I live in Miami. And what I experienced actually caused me to redirect my capstone project to an area I felt required more focused ministry. And we'll get there in just a moment, because shortly after things started shutting down, a series of high-profile police and vigilante killings caught our national attention. The egregiousness of the murders of George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery, and Breonna Taylor, the killing of Breonna Taylor, who is yet to receive justice, and so many more were inescapable because of a combination of camera footage, media coverage, social anxiety, and the simple fact that us being mostly stuck inside meant that we could not look away. Lots of people were confronted with uncomfortable truths about race that we'd previously been able to ignore. And some, largely, even mostly white people, came to realize that they lived the majority of their lives without any meaningful relationships with anyone who didn't look like them or experience life as they did. And the internet seemed like a feasible way to close that gap. That's the context of me finding myself on the radar of white Christians for the first time in my life. It was uncomfortable. I don't like every kind of attention, but I recognized something relatively quickly. You see, not everybody was looking to be entertained or enlightened. Not everyone was looking for a new black friend to hide behind in debates about a bunch of stuff that black friend ain't I didn't ask to be thrown around in anyway. Like not everybody was on that type of time. Well, a lot of people were simply looking for belonging. I learned that because I once spent 12 hours straight roasting strangers on the internet who asked me to roast them. Weirdest thing in the entire world. I said, oh, you just want to feel seen. You want belonging. And what the pandemic and all of the increased time online and this national grieving exposed was the profound sense of isolation, if not outright loneliness, that so many people were feeling. And the church should have been set up to address this exact thing, but that was not always the case. So increasingly, I found more people reaching out publicly and privately with all sorts of questions about justice, about history, about race, about faith, about God. And I found more people from around the country and the world viewing me as something that only a few people had before, their pastor. These relationships look different, but I took them seriously. And when I graduated from seminary, I did so after turning in a capstone project on how digital engagement and communities were reshaping society around us, and how the church needed to take that seriously, to be intentional about it even. And so 3 years later, we're preparing to launch the Intention Church this September, in fact. And we're trying to provide structure to a community that happened rather organically. Community committed to safety, belonging, growth, and ultimately, Christ. If people can meet spouses online, perform jobs online, and complete degree programs online, it may be time to admit that there are people ready to find Christ-centered community online. And if they're ready to find Christ-centered community online, then I believe that we have a responsibility to provide it for them. I think many of our congregations have taken the possibilities of this seriously, and we try to make ourselves accessible online. And as somebody who is very involved in the local church community, I'm in that battle with you. But I think if we're honest, we can admit that as we censor these physical communities and try to provide online access, that there are some gaps when online is viewed as something as an accessory. But if we were to invert that structure and view online as the starting place and physical meetups as the auxiliaries, I think that we can cover a bit more ground. And shortly after announcing plans to launch the Intention Church in partnership with the Central District Conference, someone online shared their testimony of feeling inspired to visit their local Mennonite congregation for the first time. I think that speaks powerfully to the fact that there are so many people who are drawn to peace theology, just never had the impetus to go and try it out. I think there's an opportunity for all of us to speak prophetically to America through the simple exposure of people to theologies they hadn't really considered in this setting before. And so without having had its first official meeting, I'm here telling the story of a congregation that does not even exist in an official sense yet. Intention is already exposing people to the Jesus-focused, Anabaptist, peace church tradition of the Mennonites, as well as the prophetic tradition of the Black church in America. The 16th century's Protestant Reformation was largely made possible by the rapid acceleration of communication provided by the invention of the printing press. And in the 21st century, most of us walk around with the ability to publicize thoughts that can be viewed by thousands of people in a matter of moments in our pocket. We walk around with that in our pocket on a regular basis. The internet has opened new paths to connecting with people. Vernaculars and dialects are becoming less localized. And communities are shifting shapes in front of our very eyes. And so the Intention Church is trying to be intentional about acknowledging this reality. Online friends are real friends. Some people I've had the privilege of meeting over even the past 12 hours that I've actually connected with online in meaningful ways multiple times. And it didn't feel like meeting somebody for the first time. It felt like shaking their hand for the first time. Community online is real community, even if it's not physical all the time. And church online is not only real, but a necessary aspect of the coming reign of God. If we are to make disciples by teaching them the commands of Christ, the law of love, if you will, then we must be intentional about finding ourselves where the people are. We have to believe that God can put on flesh. In the beginning was the Logos, and the Logos was with God, and the Logos was God, right? The Word. It's not always translated as the Word in the languages around the world. And when we talk about the Logos, it's the divine intention, the divine reasoning that binds creation together. The Logos is the intention of God. And that's what the Intention Church is all about. So thank you for your time. I'm excited for not only what God is doing in the Intention Church, but what God is doing with the Central District Conference of the Mennonite Church.